Once again, we're interviewing attorney Rick Collins. My friend Rick, welcome, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Great to be back with you.
Thank you so much. Today, guys, we have something called the Anabolic Update. Attorney Collins and I are going to talk about 4 specific features. Rick, take the floor.
So I'll start with the one that I think is the biggest non-issue, and I'll save for fourth the one that I think is going to make your eyes bulge. Okay, so the first one, and a lot of people have reached out to me over social media because the DEA just published in the Federal Register a statement, a new rule about the implementation of the Designer Anabolic Steroid Control Act of 2014. So we're talking about a law that went into place 9 years ago and expanded the existing steroid law to add a whole bunch of pro-hormones. You remember when the pro-hormone market was out there and you could walk into a mom and pop or many different health food stores or supplement stores, and you could buy these steroidal products.
Superdraw.
So I was one of them. We know a bunch of them, right? And so this law 9 years ago went into place to try to curtail that market and make these kind of loopholed anabolic steroids into illegal anabolic steroids. And so why it would have taken 9 years to do a Federal Register notice about a final rule, I don't know. I was hoping when people started talking about it that the rule would actually share something new. It really doesn't. It just rehashes what the law says. It talks about implementation. It means they're implementing it. But I would be curious to know, how have priorities at DEA changed? What sort of enforcement tactics have been used? I see it as a lawyer. As you know, Tom, I handle a lot of anabolic steroid cases coast to coast. I was figuring the other day, I've practiced law in 40 different federal courthouses across the country. I think that's got to be close to a record. I'm not sure. But so I've seen a lot, but I was hoping that there'd be some pronouncement from DEA about what's going on. There isn't. So for those of you who are concerned or heard about it, well, what's DEA saying about implementing the DASCA, this law from 2014? Well, this doesn't really tell us. Hopefully we'll get some more information about it in the time to come.
Right. And I know guys always think, it's such a heated topic, with not to mention the steroids, but now the broader spectrum of SARMs and pro-hormones and peptides that you and I always talk about and that we see, right, from a medical clinical side and from a legal side. I mean, so it's kind of progression of our society that people want to have performance enhancement drugs. And in America, which is certainly an incredibly really progressive place, that people say, I want this, I deserve to have it. It's my body, right? It's my risk. It's my body. I want, in other venues and topics we don't need to go into politically, people have rights with their bodies. And why don't I have a right with my body with these features? And is the government, back in the day when we didn't have so much social media, I think the government had more of a role to protect people.
Right.
But now with so many mouths and eyes and ears listening to what makes sense to them, and is this influencer obviously crazy and extreme, and in the end you'll make your decision, and your families, and hopefully there'll be parents, fathers and mothers that will really protect their children and say, look, this is wrong. I mean, it's freedom. People have freedoms in this country. We pay for it, right? With the gun laws, without the gun laws, not going to get into the politics, but it's just, you pay for freedom. So it's just one of the things, but this is this incredible, now they're adding, again, for guys that don't know, it's not just steroids, they're adding the pro-hormones, the peptides, the SARMs, and you're the legal guy on it. So
yeah, and I would say that I guess all of these policy issues come down to how you weigh safety versus freedom, right? Where is personal autonomy? It's my body, my choice kind of. Versus how do we protect children or other vulnerable populations in any given circumstance from harm? And so finding that balance is what we want to do. And I think we would agree that we often don't do it as well as we should.
No.
And I'll finish just by saying, you probably heard me say this, just as there is a certain percentage of the human genome that wants to get high, and no matter what you're going to do, you could enact all the draconian drug laws, you could legalize drugs, you could do whatever policy you may want to put into place. But by and large, the people who want to get high are going to get high. That's what they're going to do. And similarly, there's a certain percentage of the human genome that wants to be jacked. And they're gonna do it, whether it's using stuff that's coming from Mexico or from Asia, or stuff that's raws imported from China and made in somebody's kitchen or basement, or going to a clinic that's sort of on the fringe of legality and just giving them a bogus script. There's a certain percentage. Obviously, we want to protect children. We want to protect minors. We don't let them drink. There are reasons why adults have more autonomy than those whose brains who haven't yet developed a full prefrontal cortex to protect them. So that makes sense. But yeah. So that's I think the where we stand with that.
Common sense, and so many of the followers that follow both of us and everyone that's looking at us more and more, we're just a platform of our discussions as a physician and a lawyer, the old school combination, doctors and lawyers, but in the anabolic world, so what's coming out? All right, next one, the Wild West. Tell us.
Yeah, so you and I were talking about this offline a number of times. There was a big article in MedPage that described the current state of TRT and described it as a Wild West in the online context, basically saying that there are these online low T clinics that thrived during the pandemic, but new changing rules may bring them down. And it was a critical article about the current state of TRT, basically decrying all of the clinics that are conducting what's basically a steroids upon the asking sort of practice, that are not doing labs, that are not really looking at who the patients are, that are never seeing any patients in person, never doing any physical examinations. In some cases, it appears that it's the patient who is determining what the drug regimen should be. And so certainly those are the most extreme. And obviously there are bad actors in every industry, and you could certainly opine on whether any of that even constitutes the practice of medicine, or if it's something other than that. But on the other hand, there are a lot of good practitioners who are involved in hormone replacement, and articles like this really are kind of a kick in the face to the ones who are trying to do it right. And you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, and that's what these folks do. And the experts and those who are kind of behind articles like this have a very different, arguably myopic, or arguably extreme kind of view, where if you are anywhere above 300 nanograms per deciliter, you are absolutely not appropriate for testosterone replacement. I don't care what your symptoms are. I don't care, the idea that it wouldn't even dawn on them that if your levels were 800 when you were 40 and they're now 310 when you're 45, that maybe something's going on here, and maybe TRT might be something that you need, even if you're maybe 400 and you had been at 800. So obviously those nuances are completely, not seen by the traditional orthodox endocrinologists who are behind these sorts of articles.
But the interesting piece is, if you look at the academic edge of both urology and endocrinology, because the endocrinology guys are this day and age, their number one job is dealing with diabetes and obesity. Okay.
Right. Yep.
And then after that, it's
then
not going to
maybe
be
thyroid after that.
right.
Yeah.
It's not in the waiting room. It's they're overwhelmed, right, with the primary care,
Yep.
shortfall we have, which is going to be outrageous every day, every year later. It's unbelievable shortage. They're all internal medicine doctors. That's where we're cut. And then when you look at the shortage, they're busy with diabetes and obesity. Then they're busy with thyroid, parathyroid, osteoporosis. I used to be a primary care doctor. I have women that were postmenopausal, typically 10 years, and I knew they have either they're going into osteoporosis or they have frank osteoporosis, and I don't know these medicines, so I don't know it. So I would send them to, I remember, the University of Connecticut or Yale, because I was in Connecticut, great evidence-based centers of excellence, and they would see endocrinology doctors, and no one knows. So they're busy with all these people, and then a guy comes in, with low T. I mean, he's back of the bus guy. Come on, this is. I mean, it's not that I actually do agree with them, and then urology doctors are surgeons. People don't know this. I'm a medical doctor; those are surgical doctors. We're internal medicine; those are surgeons, and they historically have taken care of men and testosterone because of the testicles. That's so. Of course, and some of these doctors really do know what to do, but when you look at the effects of testosterone, not to mention diagnosing with total and free sexually binding globulin, LH, FSH, we're not looking at people that have primary gonadal failure. We don't have that. That's one out of a million or one out of 500,000 or something like this. The average guy's right. He's older. He has metabolic disease. He's exhausted. Testosterone is absolutely low. It's not anti-aging. It's just that when you do a history on the guy, there's a lot of things going on with the guy. Is one of them in the end going to be something that you can admit after the weight loss and the behavior changes? And the guy's sex drive is not good and he's tired. Can you ameliorate that? Well, the Endocrine Society, they agree with that now. So that article that was written, it doesn't represent that the true academics in endocrinology. So it's interesting that whoever wrote that is slanted. If they would be argued inside their own house, they would say, we don't just treat a number. We agree. They used to, but so many doctors, because there's so much liability out there. I know you're a lawyer, but you're a good friend of mine.
Well, lawyers are part of the problem for that.
I mean, but it's not. But medical now.
So everybody's got to cover their butt,
But med-mal is just like, I've never had a lawsuit in 20 years. I don't even want to talk about it. But I've been a concierge doctor, which means the number of patients I've treated has been so minimal. It's been one doctor to 10 a day. So I don't see 40 a day. So I was able to call when people call, you call them back, and it's just exhausting. But you don't get sued. So when it comes to this stuff, doctors that are traditional doctors, endocrinology, urology, primary care, family medicine, even the nurse practitioners that may have a license to distribute controlled drugs in whatever state, they don't feel comfortable doing it, Rick, because there's too much damn liability. It can cause it, with or without the Travers trial. You could have a heart attack, blood clots. You can have depression. You could moody. You could prostate issues, not cancer, potentially cancer. If you give testosterone to cancer, you could grow it. It
doesn't help that the FDA put a black box warning on testosterone.
Black box warning, 2015. Right? They put multiple. They have multiple. One of them, I think the last one was for depression and bodybuilding. They said bodybuilding. They say bodybuilding on the black box. So look, okay. So that's number 2, the Wild West. And the Wild West, guys, is this. I'm on the side of freedom and letting people, Rick, I think you and I are going to agree, the educated patient consumer is the best. You're educated. That's why I have my app. That's why we do these videos. If you're educated and you're listening to things and weighing things out, I always think there's a wife somewhere with a guy and she's kind of like this. Is it really making sense, honey? We want you to feel great, but if your blood pressure is horrible, your red blood cells are off the chart, and you're going to have a blood clot, I mean,
Sure.
and this clinic is giving you whatever you want and whatever
Yep.
you a la carte menu again, but and they don't check the hearts, they don't do that. Okay, that's why I made my app. So that's number 2. Number 3, give it to us.
So is this the end of Anavar? Right?
Wow.
Is this
Guys,
the
pay
end of Anavar?
attention.
So, look, anybody who has been in the powerlifting circles or the bodybuilding circles going back, there you go, hitting it, 40 years, right? I mean, Anavar was considered, certainly in bro science, among the very safest of all anabolic steroids. It was a pre-contest drug. It, fable to give you that hard plastic type look when you get on the stage. Popular with female competitors because not seen as the sort of very androgenic drugs like testosterone, for example. And so there was recently, just last month, a notice that came out from FDA concerning oxandrolone, which is obviously the actual drug. Anavar was just a trade name back in the day, but oxandrolone is the drug. And the FDA made an announcement that Gemini Laboratories and 3 other drug companies had decided that they would petition FDA to pull back their new drug applications for new oxandrolone products. These were oral products, either 2.5 milligram or 10 milligram oxandrolone products, and that they were going to pull them. They basically saying to FDA, we don't think they're safe. And the reasons for them making the petition were agreed to by FDA, which basically said, we think this is correct. And they said it's both not effective and not safe. The lack of efficacy, interestingly, was based on a citation by FDA to a advisory committee report from January of 1984 from FDA.
Oh, my
We're talking
Lord.
40-year-old information, which was really just generically about anabolic steroids and was just a negative advisory committee opinion about
saying that
anabolic
it doesn't
steroids.
build muscle? It doesn't build muscle.
Well, what they wrote was the advisory committee unanimously concluded that there was no evidence of efficacy for oxandrolone. This is from 1984, January of 1984. And then FDA references the product labeling and says that there are multiple safety warnings and precautions, liver failure, liver cell tumors. These can be fatal, blood lipid changes, and other types of serious potential adverse effects that could come from taking oxandrolone. And when you combine that efficacy issue and the safety issue, these things shouldn't be on the market. Now, this FDA notification is limited to just those companies and just those products. Okay, so the sky isn't falling based on this notice from FDA. But that being said, if you apply that logic, I mean, if you believe those claims that there's no efficacy and that the mere adverse effects that were listed on the label are enough to make it no longer safe to be on the market, then the next question is, how does FDA allow other oxandrolone products to remain on the market or to come onto the market? And I mean, if you apply the logic, I don't see a difference. Now, the good news, I guess, is that it takes years for government bureaucratic agencies to do very much of anything. And so it could be nothing further could ever happen from this. FDA may get to looking at this again in a year, 10 years, 20 years, a lifetime. I don't know. But if you apply that logic, then I would say, in theory, all oxandrolone products are in jeopardy, and which is ironic because I think, and I'll defer to you on this, of the various anabolic steroid preparations that have been on the market for the last 40 plus years, oxandrolone is probably one of the safest. No?
If you look at anecdotal, because all we have is anecdotal information,
Well, and
it's
there's a
absolute.
reason for that too, right?
Right, right.
Yeah,
That's the thing, and it's interesting that if you look at the oral, steroids across the board, there's so many. That 17 alpha alkylated. This is the only one that if you look at the incredible pharmacology of the independent drugs that we have, right, from these DHT class, the NOR19, and the testosterone derived classes, both injections, intramuscular injections, and pills. This one is essentially cleared, metabolized through the renal clearance. I mean, but if you do take a lot of it, you're going to see a bump up of the transaminases, but it becomes what's the therapeutic dose when it was
right.
meant for burns.
But the
and for
difference between a medicine and a poison is always the dose,
right,
right?
right,
So,
right, right. And if you look for the
and
stuff, but things are going to change because I don't prescribe Anavar just because being the anabolic doc, I keep things super. My attorneys have always told me, as you know, there's a bullseye in my back, so I said I better just really evaluate. But I didn't really need to do that. But I thought I better really, if there's any question at all, even just with testosterone, I better just say no to that patient and just move forward. So I
right.
take guys that are basically dead. I mean, their testosterone levels are
Wow.
dead.
Wow.
I've always been that way. And
Yeah.
I've never, ever prescribed one tablet of Anavar, growth
Right.
hormone,
Right.
Winstrol, I mean, whatever else, growth, nothing. I've been begged by people for their
Sure.
mothers.
Yeah.
Please provide
And
it to
there are
my
docs,
mother.
but obviously there are docs who do, whether it's
Right,
branded
right,
or
right.
compounded, and
And
so
I
I
don't
think
and I don't put them down. But
right,
it's an off-label utility, or
right.
actually they're using it on label because it's there for recovery from cachexia. It's there for a post-operation, after an operation. You're cachectic
If
and you're
those are the
recovering.
appropriate
I
diagnoses,
mean,
then it
it's
could be on label.
from the
Sure.
1960s, 50s,
Yeah.
60s, 70s. So it's not even off label, but the stigma is so great. But here's what's happening: the young people are using steroids like we've never seen before, right? 20, right? So what's going to happen, Rick, is
It's that again. That's very anecdotal. And if you look at the actual,
right,
I always look at the Monitoring the Future studies, which does an annual survey of high school, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade
right.
students, and you really, despite what we perceive anecdotally or read in the papers, the actual statistics that are reported in those studies don't really show a major bump up in usage. It's interesting,
But you and I both know in the streets, in the gyms, and in my clinic that I can't believe what happens because of social
I think there's
media.
a lot of SARMs. I think there's a lot of SARMs being used out there. I think
Right.
peptides are much more used now than they were years ago. But look, the bottom line is, like we've talked about before, every drug has side effects, right? And if you
It's
watch,
absolutely.
turn on the 7 o'clock news on any news channel, and you will see commercials for pharmaceutical products that show people dancing in forests and drinking and having this wonderful time, wearing flowery dresses and hats tipped to the side, and life is wonderful, while at the same time the announcer is telling you that taking this drug can cause
Kidney
tumors,
disease,
liver
death.
death. It's like a smorgasbord of death, right?
Every single
There's a
possible
whole lot
side
of different
effect.
ways this thing will kill you.
The Fed makes them put it into the commercial, and they make it with certain decibels. I know that they can't say it too fast, and it's like, but
Right.
then I'm going to go get this drug, right, honey?
Right. After seeing that commercial, I want to dance in the park.
But the thing is, I'm a doctor, and I use these pharmaceutical drugs for the cardiac side. I love these, monoclonal antibodies and all these PCSK9s. But again, if you look at the blacklist, the black label and the really serious side effects, I know what's real, what is potentially like 1 out of 1,000,000 versus 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20. So, but in the end, these young guys are on these PEDs, and they're going to be congressmen, state congressmen.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to be state senators. They're going to be federal. they're going to be running the government in the next 20 years, Rick. And they're going to be looking at it from an evidence-based perspective. But you see, the old guys, funny enough, like you and I, like we're going to be kind of moving out. And the young guys, I know they're on the drugs because I take care of it. It's so sad. Unfortunately, they're getting misinformation, most of them. And this is not
by young guys, you're talking about guys 18
20s. Right,
20,
20, 20.
Yeah.
Not
and
teenagers.
I was referring more to the real young.
No. It's sad that I mean I mean 19, 20 to 30, and Rick, this is the number,
no question.
and there's no one to blame. It's just the nature of our civilization, if you will.
Right.
All right, Rick. So let's get into number 4. Let this rip.
So I'll hold it up here, and this is big news, right? So how far it goes, I don't know, but an Australian businessman named Aaron D'Souza has announced that in December of 2024 there will be the first ever enhanced games. This is basically all chemicals are legal, no drug testing, use what you want, do what you want.
What events?
It's going to be, they haven't specified yet that I can see, but it seems like it's going to be competing with the Olympics. And there was a reference to combat sports in the article, which which adds a very different component to it. And so this, obviously, there have been a lot of stories in the sports media about it. It was just announced. It got a lot of news late last month and early this month. And traditionally, expectedly, the sports media is up in arms about it, and all of the world anti-doping folks and U.S. anti-doping folks are decrying it. And it's funny because I posted on social media, and you and I connect on social media a lot, and I'm at Rick Collins ESQ on Instagram, which is where I post a lot of my stuff, and tag you in a lot of it as well. And the camps, there's basically 3 ways that people are looking at this, three kind of buckets that the viewers go into. One is those who feel that this is going to be the end of sports, this is the end of the world, everybody's going to die, it's going to be mass death, etc., and it's a terrible thing, and somebody's got to stop this guy before he does it. So that's the one bucket, and I think there's plenty in that bucket for sure. There's also the opposite end who are like, and you and I both know these guys, and they're like, finally,
right.
This was all, now people can do what they want. That is the spirit of sport. What are you willing? Sport is about sacrifice. Sport is about doing what it takes, whatever it takes. And whether it's extreme diet or
this is warriors. They're warriors.
Absolutely. And so there is that mentality of people who are cheering.
And I don't like that. But it's just, let's be honest.
It's part of the population of folks who are looking at this. Right. And then the third is maybe the most interesting and maybe the most cynical of the 3. And that is those who say, you know what? You're going to see, you're not going to see records broken. You're not going to see something new. You're going to see that drugs have already been permeating sports, and that, it was all a facade anyway.
Right.
We're just
That's why the guy's doing it.
The concession of what it really is.
Isn't that why the guy's doing it? Isn't that like
I think that's probably one of the points he's hoping to make. Whether it will work out that way or not, I don't know.
What country is it, Rick? What country?
Oh, he's an Australian businessman. So, but where it'll be held is unclear.
Like, what country is going to allow this, to be housed?
And also, who's going to sponsor it? Pfizer? Right? I mean, what company? I can't imagine.
Coca-Cola?
Budweiser stepping up and saying, Breakfast of Champions or whatever.
Oh my God!
It. So I don't know where he's going to get the funding for it, and I don't know. Now, he is saying that it's going to be open to those who are using and who are not using, and so everybody is free. It's just not going to be tested, so you can do what you want.
It's back to the Romans. I mean, it's just kind of back to the Roman Empire. I mean, if they had drugs back then, I think I did some research when I was looking at a presentation I give on, the history of androgens, and they were ingesting testicles, even of humans,
Right.
and that's a historic thing that
Wow.
people, I think, but I mean, and animals and bulls, but I mean,
Sure.
that was brutal, right? That was to the death stuff, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that kind of, I mean, that's the warrior mentality. That's doing whatever it takes, you know.
It's unreal. And then, it's sad that it's a paradox, right? The bodybuilders of today absolutely are warrior like. One guy, I don't want to say his name, slept on the floors,
Right.
supposedly, and you may know who that is. He
Hmm.
slept on the floors. Like, why would you sleep? Don't you want to get a good night's sleep to recover so you could build your muscle more? Well, he
Right.
slept on the floor because he was in that state of mind.
Right.
He was at war. And it's
Right.
like, it is true. If you know these guys, like you and I both know them,
Sure.
and in that adrenaline, in that moment, in that culture, that these guys, and if the sad part is, if they did just die, it would be sad. I'm not for that, but it would be painless. But the problem is they die slowly with
Right.
with kidney failure, and they
Right.
go into they have to go through dialysis, and
Yeah.
they're terrible sick, and the muscles are wasted, and their hearts.
Yeah.
Look at the old pro
Not a way
bodybuilders.
you want to go.
You
Not the way
you
you want.
you don't want to go that way, and it's so paradoxic that they've been big and strong their whole life. They've been these amazing pillars, and then as they get older, they're accelerated into cachectic and disease and paralyzed and kidney failure, heart failure. I'm trying to prevent that and
Right.
try to keep the party going from an ethical standpoint, harm reduction as much as you. I mean, but I won't prevent it 100%. Of course, I
Right.
won't.
Well, I'm going to keep everybody up to date and posted if there's if we get a date, a specific date or a specific place or more information. I'll put it up on my social media. People can follow me and get the information, and I'll bring back once I have some more hot news. You and I can reconvene and we'll talk again about a new anabolic update.
We will keep doing this, brother. Thank you so much, Attorney Collins. I do appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.